He had retired and was in his early 70s, living at Sandfield Road in Headington. It was at this point that Joy Hill came to help him. She was working for his London publishers, Allen and Unwin.
I was sent to see him in Oxford, and the prospect of going to see him was terrifying. The day I joined Allen and Unwin, I was put in an office with a girl who was besotted with J.R.R. Tolkien, his books, and pictures of hobbits she'd drawn decorated the walls. And from that first day, every day, Tolkien came up in some form, and everybody kept saying, "You must read the books," and I never did. So here I was, off to Oxford one autumn day, never having read the books. I went to the house. Mrs. Tolkien opened the door, and she was very amused because I was carrying a lot of parcels which contained gifts from fans, and we had great fun when the professor joined us opening these. Then I had to go to see the professor by himself, and after a few minutes he said, "Have you read my books?" The dreaded question. So there was a terrible pause, and I said, "No." "Why not?" came the reply. So I thought, well, I've got to be honest with him. I said, "Well, quite honestly, since the day I've stepped into Allen and Unwin, I've heard the name of Tolkien so often, and it's been thrust at me so often, and how marvellous the books were, that I've taken a reactionary view, and I've never read them." And then there was a chuckle, and he said, "Quite right, too. I'm very glad you've been honest with me." And after that, the ice was broken. It's part of my job to have his mail, and where necessary, give him the letters which were personal. And indeed, he saw a lot of the fan mail, but he obviously couldn't answer them all, because sometimes we averaged between 200 or 300 a week. What was so striking was that his interest in the various letters that came. Now, these were very diverse. Royalty wrote, president's daughters, prisoners in jail, people in Broadmoor, mothers with sons on drugs, social workers who had no life outside their work and were being depressed by their work. And he took a great interest in the underdog. And this is particularly so with one person who was in an institution and was having nightmares as a result of reading The Lord of the Rings. And I always, as a precaution, had to check up with the doctor or the ward sister in these cases, because sometimes you've got people who write to him and were so ill that the next day they'd forget they'd ever written. But in this particular case, he wrote to the person in question and continued to do so. And she progressed, and he explained to her that there was no need to be frightened and gave reasons why. And every Christmas he kept saying, "I've had a Christmas card from Miss X." And the same was true of a prisoner in jail, who, when his cell door was locked at night, just lived for reading The Lord of the Rings and losing himself in that book. And also true of a lady of 80 in a London basement flat who was going blind. Her one highlight of the day was when her neighbour came in and read her the next few pages of The Lord of the Rings. He was obviously very distressed, yet I felt that he had this most tremendous faith that it carried him along in a way which, if he hadn't had it, he would have absolutely broken down time and time again. Last year, during the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, I had to ring up Professor Tolkien, as was frequently the case, and every time I rang him up, no reply. So 2 or 3 days got past, and I got really rather frantic, thinking, I wonder if he's ill, what's happened to him. So I tried again. And I said, "I've been worried stiff about you," when he eventually answered the phone. "Where have you been?" And there was a great chuckle down the phone. "I've had a marvellous week," he said. "I've been downstairs watching the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. And oh, he said, the precision of this, that and the other, and who do you think's going to win? And he'd been downstairs with his scout, watching television.
She remembers vividly the last time she saw him.
We used to have a routine when visiting him about doing the work first and getting it over and done with. And then it was talk. And this time, strangely, he flapped his hands and said, "Oh, no, we won't do any work just yet. Have a drink." So we had a drink. And then he said, "We'll go for a walk." And we went for a very long walk. And it really was very long. And I kept saying, "Wouldn't you like to sit down?" Because I was tired, he wasn't. And he said, "Oh, no, we were going to see all my favourite trees." And this we did, and we looked at all the names of all the trees in botanical gardens. And we went down by the river and looked at the willows. And then we came back again, and we did the trees all over again. And he said, "You know, I really would like some pictures of these." So the idea was that I was to go back in September and take some pictures for him of the trees. But of course this was never to happen.